This video is from the perspective of a wedding photographer that primarily uses speed lights, specifically right now the Godox V1. I'm super happy with the V1, but in some receptions I've found myself needing to add a little bit more light from an off-camera flash. Together, these two strobes can easily solve any problem you find while out on locations. The AD200 Pro is also scalable into any sort of studio situation you could also find yourself in. We're here today with the Godox AD200 Pro, one that has been really kind of making waves in the photography community. And we're just gonna take some photos, one light, no modifier, just kind of walk around town, walk around the studio and see what we can get up to. So this here is a bare bulb attachment, and it is something that I don't get to use as a speed light user, and it just creates a lot of light in a lot of different directions. In comparison to this, where it's just kind of firing that direct beam, this just goes absolutely everywhere. Using this bare bulb attachment, it almost feels like you have kind of a small size softbox on the actual flash, and you're able to really generate a lot of soft light, especially if you're in kind of favorable surroundings like we are here. It's not recommended to use the flash like this, but it actually does a pretty good job. Rather than using modifiers, what I like to do is just bounce my flash off of whatever we kind of naturally have going on. I find that I can do a lot more variations that way, and specifically at a wedding day, I really just don't have the opportunity to set up a softbox or set up an octo box or any real modifiers. I find that it takes a lot of time to kind of do, and to really get it dialed in perfect takes a little bit more time than I would have on a typical wedding day. So right now, bouncing this bare bulb flash off of all of this, I'm essentially creating a softbox that is this size, so when all this light comes back, it's going to be pretty much perfect, hopefully. This XT2 transmitter is one of the best I've used. I like that you can just select whatever your group is, and then instantly you just have access to it on this back wheel here. The main benefit of the AD200 Pro is that over the V1, it has a lot more power, so you can do a lot in a studio environment. It's very versatile, and you'll see as we get outside that it does even more than a traditional speed light could ever do. The one drawback for me, and the reason that I like to have a V1 as well, is that you can use the Godox V1 as your controller for this. So you can have your on-camera flash and you can be firing it off of whatever you want, as well as using this as an off-camera flash off in the distance somewhere. And you know that with this, that you're not gonna run out of battery life all day. Same with the Godox V1, the lithium-ion batteries, super fast recharge time, and just the fact that they just always seem to work. That I found that one of my biggest struggles with any speed lights was that either the recycle time just was never there or my pocket wizards would fail. And with this system, everything just seems to work all of the time. So it makes me happy as a shooter out there capturing once in a lifetime moments. This is the most once in a lifetime moment right now. And this is an easy way to create just incredibly soft light. As long as you have access to a white wall or a gray wall. Even balanced at 1/16 power, it is balancing for the sunlight coming through the window. I like to be inspired by my environments, so I am bringing just this flash alone. We're gonna go out into the world and see what we can get up to. I prefer this version of photography to going out with lots of soft boxes and sandbags to hold things down. If I can just bounce this light off of something that's about this big, and I can make this spread something like a softbox of this size, I would way rather do that naturally, organically, than bringing all of those modifiers and adapters with me out in the field. And I feel like for wedding days specifically, as a wedding shooter, that's something that's incredibly important to me. To just be that you can just pick this up and you can bring this anywhere. If we had a big softbox, octobox, whatever on this, it would be a lot more cumbersome to carry around. This, easily you could give this to anybody, you give this to a groomsman, you give this to a bridesmaid, and they can just carry it around for you. Or you can bring your own assistant if you're a professional. But I don't. So there are a few different ways you can use an off-camera flash, such as this. The first one being that there's a big white wall behind Liam here. So I think we're gonna bounce off of that, and we're just going to basically cast kind of an illumination only on this area, make the background a little bit darker. And even though we are outside almost at 12 noon, it's gonna look like an entirely different scene than you would get if you just shot ambient. Here we're using the AD200 Pro as kind of a bounce fill light at half power. It's pretty dirty. That's what we call a dirty bounce. Here you can see that the image is a lot more balanced and a lot more three-dimensional just based on the simple half power light off that wall. Now I'll do the opposite way, where I'll have you close to this wall here. So I'm gonna put you right about here. Basically what's happening here is that it's both bouncing off of that wall kind of as a natural reflector back into the scene, and then also she's getting a little bit of the beam direct from the flash. So outside, this is just feeling like a good shot already. And even though there's a beautiful truck loading in the background, it is near perfect light on Clarissa's face. The other thing that I'll note is on these Godox with the lithium-ion battery, the recycle time for a full pop is 1.8 seconds. On the V1, it's also very, very fast. So if you're using this at full power outside, it's actually usable rather than waiting 4 seconds in between shots, which kind of really ruins the flow of any shoot.
And as you'll see, we get some super high quality light that doesn't really look like anything that you could achieve by ambient. It just has a bit of an almost lit texture to it that adds some polish to your final image. And what I'm doing here is the main light is now the sun reflecting off the white building behind me. That is the main light. And then my backlight is the AD200 Pro. It's set to 1/64th power so that it's getting a little bit of wraparound light, but it's not trying to overpower the scene or become a complete rim light. I want the scene to look natural, but I also want it to have just a little bit of something extra that you're not going to get if shooting ambient.
And basically what I'm doing is I'm just hiding the flash right behind Clarissa and her hat.
And now we're moving into the Space Woman sequence, which is a shoot that I did with Lee Zavitz. That video will be out eventually. And basically, space is the only time that I figured you could have multiple light sources. So we have the sun, and we also have 2 off-camera flashes pointed back at 45-degree angles to give kind of that nice 360 wraparound strange light to the scene. And as you can see, both sides of Clarissa's face have a little bit of light on them, which is not something that I would usually do. But because we're in space, here is another level of things. Maybe, is that too much? Dial it back. This is a styled shoot that you might have seen a few days ago, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the off-camera flash section of it.
So I'm going to do my best to kind of angle it down a little bit here. And we're getting some nice soft window light, so I'm really just kind of adding a little bit of complementary light. I'm not trying to overpower the scene, or maybe I am. I don't know. We'll experiment with a few different things and see what works out best. Really what I'm going to do is I'm going to expose for what's going on, and then I'm going to add this in slowly. So I'm going to start it at its lowest intensity down at 1/128. Looks pretty nice. I think I'm kind of happy with that. It's also important to move your light around. Usually if I walked into this scene, I would maybe have an off-camera flash set up bouncing off of this big white area here and coming back into the scene. What I did with the softbox there was technically correct, but I like the texture of bouncing off this wall even better than that. You're not supposed to have your camera strap in the shot, or maybe you are. Maybe that's the new thing. Little tiny camera strap in the corner there. Texture, 3-dimensionality.
If this was a normal wedding day, I would have this flash just no modifier, probably bouncing off of one of these walls off in the far distance and powered up a little bit so that I was able to kind of fill the space and balance out for the garage door light coming in the side. But because it is a styled shoot, I set this up and I like the light a lot. I really do prefer the look of natural light. So in this case, I'm using natural light as the main light, and I'm using this off-camera flash to really add that like wraparound texture that you see there. I really, really love the way that this image came together, and using natural light first is, I think, most important for any wedding shooter or really photographer that just wants to be able to best use their environment, and then figuring out where to add off-camera flash to complement that. All right, that is all for today. I think that the combination of a Godox V1 and this AD200 Pro is really a great versatile kit to have for pretty much any shooter. I would say wedding shooters particularly, but the combination is really kind of the absolute perfect. So if you're on the fence, definitely I recommend these, and I will see you again next time.